Alrighty, so now both conference is set for Decision Day 2022, and that we now know all the scenario that is going to be happening on Decision Day. And while we definitely didn't get like maximum chaos that we thought we were going to get after watching these two games, one thing we're definitely going to get is chaos, and definitely a lot of scenarios that's going to be happening, which is why I'm definitely going to make a video talk about the 5 key points in terms of what we're going to have in Decision Day 2022. But one thing for sure is the fact that, we're definitely going to have both conferences that still have playoff spot up for grabs, and we even will have both conferences that have home field advantage that could be up for grabs too. But we start off by talking about the first game, which is Charlotte FC versus Columbus Crew, and also I'm not going to do the timestamp of this review because there's only 2 games I'm going to be talking about. It should be a relatively quick review, but the first one between Charlotte versus Columbus, as I mentioned before, this was a game that was postponed a couple months ago, so that's why the game was resumed at the 15:58 mark instead of at minute 1. But one interesting thing that I forgot to mention in this game is the fact that basically the roster and the lineup was completely frozen in this game. Now, I understand that of course is the rule in MLS, and I think that's kind of just a general rule that the IFAB of course sets up, where if you have a game that is being postponed and it's being postponed or suspended to another day, you have to of course have the same lineup. But that being said, I do feel like that's kind of harsh, and in some way I feel like maybe MLS should give this as an exception, because we didn't know that from July that this game would be a game that has heavy playoff implication, especially for one team. They're fighting for their playoff lives, and that Charlotte basically kind of are forced to play a lot of guys that haven't been getting regular minutes for this team, and that they're pretty much forced to put out some of their players that are already are informed that are on the bench in this one, and hence that's why Charlotte kind of was a little bit aggressive in terms of substitution, and they really subbed in a lot of those informed players coming at this game. And that, again, I think they also mentioned multiple times on the Charlotte TV feed, it's such an unfortunate situation because, again, you're putting a lot of these guys that have been getting regular minutes, and now they're thrust into this game because, we're just pretending like that game just happened yesterday, even though it happened 2 months ago. Now, that being said, in terms of how this game would turn out for the last 75 minutes or so, well, this game, as much as, yes, in the end, Charlotte did fall short in terms of getting the win that they need to stay alive. This game kind of summarized how down the stretch they have been, where this team just don't give up. Like, and I'll say it later on, but they should have nothing but proud of themselves of after this game and held their heads up high, because again, this is a team that they will fight and scrap every way to trying to get a result, and unfortunately in this game they just came a little bit short. But early on in the 16th minute, Etienne did miss just wide from close range before Bender. I thought he should have scored this one, as he had a sitter from 6 yards out, and yeah, Ben Bender is going to be thinking about this one, and also one that he had later in this game that I'll talk about. But I thought early on Columbus can control the possession, but the chances were pretty even so far. I mean, both teams had a good opportunity to get the opening goal. Zarian did hits one straight to Kalina. Now, Kalina, of course, had to play in this one, and I think in terms of the rules of how the roster is frozen, unless if it's kind of like a season-ending injury or is a severe injury enough, you cannot replace another guy with in the team that of course play in the game that was suspended to this one. So I think this was kind of the case where I think one of Charlotte player, Guzman Correjo, that did play in this one, but then he of course suffered a season-ending ACL injury, and that's why Joseph Mora basically stepped into this one too. But besides that, if it's not like a serious injury, which Kalina case, he suffered kind of a dislocated finger, which I feel like that's serious enough for a goalkeeper to be out. I feel like he probably shouldn't have been thrust or forced to be in this game, but nevertheless, he was forced into this game, and they talked about throughout the TV feed how they had to kind of wrap around a bunch of bandage in his dislocated finger just to kind of protect him. But there was time where I thought he definitely shown that he was clearly a guy that was injured and that he was clearly a guy that, I'm kind of also surprised Columbus didn't really test him too much, because when you're in opposition and you're playing against a goalkeeper that is forced to be in there even though he's injured, I feel like they should have maybe tested him a little bit more, at least in the early part. Though that being said, in the 36th minute, this is where we had one of the craziest MLS sequence we have ever seen. So basically, Bender decided that he was going to try to catch Eloy Room napping from the halfway line. He saw Room kind of came off his lines, but Room just got back to his lines to catch this one. And then as he basically put it back into the play and Columbus basically go on the attacking end, Lucas Arian decided to try the same thing. And unlike how Bender wasn't able to catch Room napping off the line, Zarian did. He scored here from the halfway line and completely caught Kalina being there with the chip from the halfway line. And like I said, that is probably one of the craziest sequences I've ever seen in MLS. I mean, I've never seen a sequence where we have one end, a player trying to chip the keeper from long range, and it didn't work, and then immediately on the other end, the opposition does the same thing, and then of course it works out too. But either way, what a goal that was from Lucas Arian. Definitely in contention for goal of the week. Well, actually, I don't even know if there's going to be goal of the week award for the midweek game, but if there is, that is definitely the goal of the week. But certainly, you can definitely sense that we're maybe going to be in for some MLS after dark kind of shenanigans after that sequence that we saw. Though in the 40th minute, Kalina did deny Diaz from close range, and the momentum was with Columbus, and they were looking to try to score that second goal before halftime, while Charlotte, they're probably still shell-shocked after conceding that goal just a couple of minutes ago. But we do head to halftime with the Crew leading 1-0. Now in the second half, this is when Charlotte finally started to bring in some of those informed players that were forced to left off the bench because they were not part of the game that was played a couple of months ago before he was suspended. So they started to bring Rios and Jones off the bench. Though it didn't really kind of have some good effect, because early on Columbus continued to dominate and had chances to get the second goal. Morris had a chance to do so, but he hits one right to Kalina. But then in the 54th minute, Diaz would be on target as he scored here from Etienne and Cucho to make it 2-0 in favor of Columbus, and that goal might have just Charlotte play off hold, because they just could not afford to give up another goal, knowing they need two, and now they of course need three. But they waste no time to at least get one of those free goals that they need to stay alive in the playoff race, because in the 58th minute, it's Danny Rios. He scored from Reyna and Bronico to make it 2-1 in favor of Columbus, and there was definitely life for Charlotte. I mean, that crowd definitely was very quiet when that second goal went in for Columbus, but they definitely erupted when they saw their team get one back, and also knowing the fact that, again, this is a Charlotte team. They don't give up. They fight hard until the very end, and a combination, this is a Crew team that is notorious in terms of giving up goals late and are having a tough time to close out games. I feel like maybe we're in a recipe of potentially having that in this one. Though Gaines did flash a cross that was screaming for someone in the front post for Charlotte to tap it in, but unfortunately nobody did that. Schwadetsky then hits one straight to Room before Kalina had to rob Cucho from close range, and then he had to deny Zarian from close range, and it feels like the game was opening up, or the game has really opened up with the way that Charlotte was pressing for a winner. They were throwing man forward, which give Columbus a lot of space to operate at the back. Zarian then fires it high from long range, and the crowd, they were trying their best. Like, you can see this crowd was trying to make some noise, trying to will this team a goal back in this one. And it's also important to know that Columbus have gave up 13 goals in the last 15 minutes of this season. Actually, I don't think it's 13. I think it's 14 if you counted the one that they gave up against the Timbers and that Santiago Marino goal that they gave up. But either way, this is a team that leads the league in terms of giving up the most goal in the last 15 minutes. So you just had a sense that this game was far from over. And it looked like they gave up another one if it wasn't for Room with an incredible double save here, robbing both Schwadetsky and Shinishiki at the same time. Bronico then heads it just high from close range before he did the same thing, just missed wide from close range. I mean, Charlotte was putting the kitchen sink up to this point. And they eventually does get get the equalizer as Shinishiki would score from Rios to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And even though we still have a little bit, just 2 minutes left in this game, this is the thing about Charlotte. They don't give up, and knowing the fact that Columbus can easily implode it, I thought we were going to be in for it. And in fact, we probably should have been in for it in the 5th man stoppage time, because Schwedetsky, oh boy, he's going to be thinking about this. Not only tonight, but maybe the whole season now that Charlotte is eliminated. I mean, he had a free header from close range there in the 5th minute of stoppage time, and yeah, he just could not direct that one on target. And yeah, in the end, that pretty much is lights out for Charlotte chances of making the playoffs, as in a game that they need to win to stay alive. They don't. It's a 2-2 draw in this one against Columbus. But the shots in this one, 15 shots with the 17 that Columbus had, 8 shots on goal with the 7 that Charlotte has, 4 shots off target with the 5 that Charlotte has, 3 shots that was blocked with the 5 that Columbus had, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Columbus had. But like I said, for Charlotte, they should held their heads high and should be proud of the season that they have, because again, this team with just so many adversity that they had to go through both on and off the pitch, the fact that they can fight to the very end here and show that fight and tenacity to keep going until they can't do anymore, you got to give a lot of credit to them. And overall, I just think it's been a successful expansion season. Consider, earlier this season we thought that this team was going to finish dead last, and the fact that they not only didn't do that, but they fought very hard until the end. I can't wait to see how this team is going to be looking. Are they going to be maybe like Austin next season? Well, actually, I won't say that, because what Austin is doing is just incredible and something we also have not seen. But there could be a case that Charlotte can do that if they get the right player into this team. But for Columbus, yeah, it's another game where they give up a late goal. And even though I know getting a point in this game isn't the worst thing, because they're now back above the red line, now they have a must-win game in that game against Orlando City, because if they don't win that game against Orlando City, they could find themselves falling back down below the red line. And this is where I talk about those points that they gave up because of giving up late goals. It's going to come back to haunt them. And again, this game, if they had 3 points, then all of a sudden it could have changed maybe the fact they might not be a must-win game in that game where they have to go on the road to face against Orlando City. Which, speaking of a must-win game, and speaking of Orlando, that's exactly what they need to do, because now Orlando have found themselves below the red line, and in a game where this is the Florida Derby, this is a game that has a lot of playoff implication for both teams. It's Inter Miami the one that showed up in this one, and they didn't always a lot of time to show up in this one, because literally just 1 minute into the game, literally 45 seconds into this game, Campana would score from Taylor to give Inter Miami a 1-0 lead, and this was almost reminiscent of the Zarian goal, except this time Campana didn't actually shoot this one from halfway line, but more like shooting from about 30 or 40 yards out. But yeah, it was a great chip that he of course had, but Galese again just getting completely caught in no man's land there. I think he kind of rushed forward to try to get to it, and then as soon as Campana saw that, yeah, he knew that he got Galese. And again, for Galese, I don't know why he decided to come off his lines to try and get to it, because as soon as you do that, then you're giving the attacking player a chance to maybe chip it over your head, and also that's when you basically getting caught in no man's land. And yeah, Galese was just praying the fact that goes over the net. It didn't. It goes into the back of the net and give Inter Miami a dream start in this heavy playoff implication pivotal match. But besides the opening goal, I thought the game kind of started to become tight, and there was not many chances for both teams. Campana did have a chance in the 23rd minute as he went through on goal, but he missed that one wide. But then in the 38th minute, Miami would make it 2-0. It's Gonzalo Higuain scoring from Lassiter and Campana to make it 2-0 in favor of Inter Miami. And I think Higuain, he maybe have saw what Shea Salinas did with the Quakes, of how he was able to score a goal in his final home game in his career, and that, yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing too. And he did exactly that. Although I kind of feel like I wish, I know he eventually did get the curtain called in this game, but as I'll talk about a little bit later, he was actually on a hat trick, and that I feel like a great way for him to finish his career with Inter Miami and playing his final home game, would just simply score a hat trick and go out with a ban. And again, it didn't happen in this one, and I kind of wish it it did. But I can also understand why he, of course, would eventually subbed off and get the current call, knowing what was about to happen when Inter Miami really just steamrolled Orlando City in this one. But in the 42nd minute, Urso would pulls it just wide from long range as we head to halftime with Miami with a commanding 2-0 lead. There was a shout for a handball in the beginning of the second half that was not given for Orlando. Speaking of handball, that would be a big discussion. And in fact, we're going to discuss this right now. Talk about that handball that Juan, of course, get it. Now, when I look at get it, and I look at multiple angles because the Inter Miami feed actually show multiple angles of it, and I'll tell you what, in my honest opinion, think that was harsh. I think that was really harsh to be called a handball. Like, originally, my instinct was that maybe there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it because the angle that they were showing, it was really tough to see it. But then when they slow it down in slow motion, which is what VAR can do, or at least those official that control VAR can do, I feel like that was harsh. I feel like it might have hit his chest and his upper part of his arm, and that, yeah, I think that was probably should have been overturned. And that, I know Orlando City fans are going to be very mad at this, but still, when you look at how this game would turn out, I don't think you should complain a lot about how this one call was robbing their chances of getting win, because Miami was by far the better team in this one. They clearly showed up in this one, while Orlando clearly didn't. And despite the controversial penalty, it was given, and Higuain buried it to make it 3-0 in favor of Orlando City. And then in the 56th minute, it would be 4-0 in favor of Orlando City, as Ariel Lassiter would score from Duke to make it 4-0 in favor of Orlando. And if you want to see an example of bad defending in MLS, this is a great example of it. I mean, literally, Lassiter just walked through that Orlando City defense. There was no closing down whatsoever. There was just 5 defenders ball watching that one. I mean, that is just shocking defending from Orlando City. And it's a rarity to say that, too, because this team has been very good in terms of defending for most part of this season. But here, I mean, I get it. Yes, you're losing 3-0, and I get that it's been a very frustrating game, but there is no excuses for them to switch off like that. I would say that's like Quakes level defending, with the way that there was like 5 guys that was just staring at the ball and not even doing anything, and that Lassiter basically said, oh, they're not going to close me down, I'm just going to take a shot and bang it into the back of the net. And yeah, it would be that goal, of course, made it 4-0 in favor of Inter Miami, and they were in dreamland while Orlando was just imploding in this one. Well, I wouldn't say they're imploding, but more like they decided to not bother, showed up in this one. And that has to frustrate Orlando City fans, because, again, this is, as much as this is the biggest game for Inter Miami maybe in their franchise history, the same thing goes with Orlando City, at least for this season, where playoff is definitely up for grabs, and then they just didn't bother to show up in this game whatsoever. Though Kara did put it wide from close range in the 65th minute, the Ole chant was definitely ringing out in Miami every time when Miami trying to pass the ball, which I always love when that, of course, has happened, as long as it's not against my team, that is. But Orlando did get one back in the 71st minute, as Ercan Kara would score from Torres to make it 4-1 in favor of Orlando. Or no, not Orlando, I'm sorry, but in favor of Miami. Orlando was not in this game whatsoever. But Cartagena then blasts it wide from long range before he hits it straight to counter. Notice I didn't really wrote too much notes near the end, because, in a 4-0 game like that, there's really no more point of me writing games. Or in a 4-1 game like that, this game was pretty much over, unless we see some really crazy comebacks in MLS, which we've seen it before, but you just kind of sense that this was not the case. And again, a lot of the reason why Orlando kind of started to gain a foothold in the latter part of this game was because Miami clearly took their foot off the gas, and I don't blame them, because when you're 4-0 up, you're basically just coasting your way to get all 3 points. And then in the 77th minute, we had a special moment where when Higuain gets the curtain call, everybody at Drive Pink Stadium was giving him a standing ovation, similar to the way that when Shea Salinas got his current call, PayPal Park was giving him a standing ovation. And again, he deserved it, because, I know there's going to be a lot of talk whether or not if his time with Inter Miami is considered a success or failure, but one thing we know about at least for the latter part of this season, it has definitely been a success. I mean, he has carried this team on his back, and he along with the fact that Miami finally started to be effective on the road, and also started to be very effective in the defensive end. It's the reason why this team is going to be going back to the playoffs for the first time since their first season, which again, that's exactly the case, as this 4-1 win against Inter Miami give them the official X next to their name and clinch the playoff spot. And not to mention the fact that they actually still have a chance for home field advantage. And this is where I go back to the fact that it's not just the Western Conference where there's home field advantage that's still at stake. The same can go with the Eastern Conference too, because the Red Bulls technically have not secured home field advantage, and that Miami is actually only 2 points below fourth place right now. But in terms of shots in this one, now if you didn't watch this game, you wouldn't know the fact that you would maybe say that Orlando kind of got hard done. But believe me, when you watch this game, this was not close whatsoever. In fact, I actually wrote the wrong stats in terms of the shots on goal. Orlando actually only had 1 shot on goal compared to 4 that Miami has. But in terms of shots, 6 shots compared to 16 that Orlando has, 7 shots off target compared to 2 that Miami has, 8 shots that was blocked compared to none that Miami has, and possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession that Inter Miami has in this game. And, you know, for Orlando, they got to definitely forget about this game and trying to put out a better performance, because this was just an absolute horrendous performance from Orlando City in many parts. And you know, the only way to erase this kind of performance is that they need to perform in the game against Columbus, because yeah, that game, you know, I think it's going to be on national television. Well, actually, it is going to be on national television. It's going to be on FS1. All the marbles will be up for that game. Like, the winner of that game is going to move on to the playoffs. The loser is most likely going to be eliminated. And knowing the fact that, you know, both of these teams kind of had a rough midweek games, it's going to be interesting to see who can, of course, stepped up and trying to get a big bounce back. And, you know, for Orlando's sake, the city's sake, they hope that they're going to be the one. But, you know, they've also had their trouble this season at home and facing against a Columbus team that, you know, for the most part, they've been very good this season on the row, and that, you know, if they can get a draw out of that game, then it's going to be interesting to see the resources. But either way, the simplest way to say it in that game between Orlando and Columbus on decision day, it's a winner-take-all game, and it's exactly the way that I thought we were going to play out, and how this decision day, yeah, chaos is going to happen in this decision day. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these two games? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.